Welcome to another edition of Leadership Through Partnership, a presentation of the Lorain County Commissioners. I'm Craig Adams from AM 930 WEOL. Behind the camera, Kristen Bauer from the Chronicle Telegram, also chroniclet.com. Our guest today is Tom Kelley, the Executive Director of the Lorain County Office of Emergency Management and Homeland Security. And that title, Tom, has changed over the years, and we'll get to that momentarily. But we'd like to focus a little bit today on what happened 17 years ago on 9/11. Now, take us back to that time. What were you doing, and when did you know something happened?
Sitting in my office doing emails. I can remember typing emails, and a buddy of mine called on the phone and said, "Are you watching television?" I said, "No," and he said, "You should turn the television on." So I didn't have one in my office, so I walked over to the 911 agency, which is right next door, and they have a television in there. And I was watching what was going on with the dispatchers in there.
Now, here you are leading the Emergency Management Agency at that time. What were you thinking in terms professionally that what you might have to do?
Well, the first plane, when we saw that it already had hit, and I figured, well, maybe this is just an accident. But when we watched the second plane fly in, we knew there was an issue. The first thing we started getting calls from was especially the schools. What are we supposed to do? We know what's going on. This went on all afternoon. We weren't getting a lot of information from the state of Ohio or the federal government until about 8 o'clock that night when we got some information from them. At the same time, when we were watching the television, I got a few phone calls. One from the FAA in Oberlin. I have a friend that worked there, and he said, "Are you watching what's going on?" I said, "Yes." He goes, "The Flight 93 was basically over Lorain County when it turned around and went south, and we're keeping an eye on it. I'll let you know if anything occurs."
And of course, something did occur.
Yes, it sure did. The operations of our office that day drastically changed, and that was within the next couple of days.
Okay. Did anyone eventually reach out to you from the feds, the FBI, whatever other agency there might have been?
That day about noon, the FBI local agent that was here, Dave Lyons, called me and said, "I'm on my way to your office. We'll do some coordination if we have to." He got there and was only there about 15 minutes, and that was when the FAA had ordered all the planes down. And I believe Hopkins had a threat that a Delta flight was coming in with a bomb threat, and he said, "I need to go to the Hopkins airport," so he left.
What kind of steps did you and your staff have to take that day then?
Mostly was trying to get information out to the government entities, the jurisdictions, the townships and their elected officials, mayors, and the schools, especially the schools. Like I told you, they were really wanting information for their kids and what to do, how to operate for the next couple of days.
How has 9/11 changed what you do now?
Well, first, probably the biggest notice that you can see is our name. Excuse me. Shortly after that, when we started having to have planning requirements from the federal government to the state to the local level, and also grants were starting to come our way for equipment and response capabilities, the commissioners changed our name from the Emergency Management Office to the Office of Emergency Management and Homeland Security, which is quite a mouthful. And after that, probably our biggest issue was revising our plans to now be more terrorism focused than we were before, compared to hazmat and tornadoes and floods and things like that. We had that terrorism component in, was just as important as the rest of them was.
Do you have any message today for people who are watching regarding what they ought to watch out for or be aware of, or perhaps give you a call?
You know, you see something, say something, and that's true. No longer are the people that want to harm us going to look for the big cities like Boston, New York, places like that. You're starting to see stuff happen in the smaller cities and things like that. Just be aware. Don't be afraid to call if you see something that's out of the ordinary. We've had an issue, I believe it was in Avon Lake, where a gentleman was corresponding with the ISIS over the internet, and he was eventually arrested. But like I said, it could be hometown grown.
Recently, there was a large-scale drill at Lorain County Community College, and I believe your office took part in
Correct.
that. Tried to get out a lot of volunteers to take part in a mock disaster drill.
Correct.
So I guess that, and I believe the scenario was some sort of bad chemical at a concert.
Right.
So that's kind of outside the realm you speak of, as you mentioned.
Exactly. What is called a pod drill or point of distribution drill. And what the county has to do is has to have capabilities to be able to mass inoculate or mass medicate the entire population within 48 hours. And that's 312,000 people. And it's quite an undertaking, obviously. So whenever we get a chance to practice that, and that's the first wide or large scale we had of that type with the pods. But even the health department, when they have their flu clinics, and you see those advertised during the wintertime, get a flu shot, they operate those as if they were a pod drill. So we sometimes open up the county's emergency operations center and support them with running bandages back and forth, things like that, so we can keep the logistical portion good.
So you've got a lot of responsibilities.
Yeah, like I said, it probably added, as far as our emergency planning capabilities into the county's emergency operations plan, it probably increased our workload about 30%.
And you mentioned more available grants, and I assume that allowed you to purchase additional equipment over
Correct.
time.
The first 3 or 4 years after 9/11, the county received almost $2 million in federal grants to be able to supply support equipment. And some of the things, the larger items we got was the county now has them, and you've probably seen it, the mobile command unit, mobile communications unit. It goes in all SWAT calls and large fires and hazardous materials and dignitary visits when President Obama was here, that type of thing. We completely equipped our county bomb squad with a robot, a vehicle, and a trailer and a tow vehicle. Completely replaced the county's fire department's radio system, which was almost 1,000 radios. Those were probably the biggest 3 items.
Sort of on a personal note, going back to that day, 9/11, 17 years ago, was there a moment where you're looking at this more from a personal standpoint and in disbelief, and then a switch goes and you're in professional mode? Does it work like that?
Well, if you look at our county emergency plan, and yes, you're probably right. That day, especially by evening, I said, well, what did I just see here? When you look at the emergency plan that's written for the county, it's written generically enough that it can be adapted to whatever's occurring. Yes, we had to tweak it for terrorism. We added a separate section for terrorism, but overall, the county operates on a generic plan, and we just tweak it as things happen.
Well, Tom, let's hope we have no more days like that.
Right. I'd rather have a little bit of flooding than a terrorism incident, obviously.
Same here. You've been watching Leadership Through Partnership, a presentation of the Lorain County Commissioners. I'm Craig Adams from AM 930. Thanks again, Tom.
Thank you.